My girlfriend cheated while I worked 80-hour weeks to save for our apartment. So I vanished and took everything she loved the most. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and for as long as I can remember, I've believed that hard work could build anything especially love. Growing up in a modest home, I watched my parents stretch every paycheck just to keep the lights on. So when I finally landed a stable IT job, I promised myself I'd never let the people I love struggle the way we did. That promise became my entire identity when I met Lena. She was mega sharp, ambitious, the kind of person who made every room feel lighter just by walking in. We started dating, and before I knew it, she was woven into every part of my life. We'd sit up late, talking about the future our dream apartment, she called it. She'd send me Pinterest links of floor plans, furniture, and coffee tables, saying, "One day, this will be ours." I wanted that more than anything. So I started working more hours overtime, night shifts, anything I could get. I'd come home with aching shoulders and dry eyes, sometimes too tired to even eat. But when I saw her asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, I'd think, it's worth it. Lena would kiss me goodbye in the mornings and tell me how proud she was. "You're doing this for us," she'd whisper. And those words pushed me through every 12-hour day. I stopped going out with friends, cut back on everything except work and her. The apartment fund grew slowly, and so did my exhaustion, but it didn't matter. Every dollar felt like a brick in the foundation of the life we were building together. And even on the nights when I could barely keep my eyes open, I'd look at her and think, she's worth every sleepless night. But I had no idea what that faith was really costing me. It started small little things I brushed off because I trusted her. Lena began working later than usual. She'd text around 8 or 9 p.m. saying, "Just wrapping up some reports," or "We're grabbing drinks after the meeting." I didn't think twice. She deserved to relax. After all, I was practically living at the office myself. But over time, those messages became vaguer, shorter. Sometimes, I'd come home to find her already asleep, her phone face down on the nightstand. I'd kiss her forehead, whisper goodnight, and tell myself she was just tired too. Still, something about it felt off. A friend from work, Adam, once joked, "Man, you're saving for her dream apartment while she's probably out saving her energy for someone else." I laughed it off, but the words stuck in my head longer than I wanted to admit. I hated that part of me that even considered it. One Saturday, I decided to surprise her. I left work early, picked up her favorite sushi, and texted, "Can't wait to see you tonight." She replied, "Long day, babe. I'm crashing early." But when I checked her location, something I rarely did wasn't near her office or our home. It was across town, at a restaurant we'd never been to. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Maybe it was a mistake, a glitch. I refreshed. It didn't change. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to let it go. She'd tell me if something was wrong, right? When she came home hours later, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't hers, she smiled like nothing had happened. "You're still awake?" she asked, setting down her bag. I smiled back, pretending not to notice. "Just waiting for you?" And in that moment, I told myself a lie I'd clung to for far too long. Everything's fine. The next few weeks blurred into a haze of exhaustion and denial. I buried myself in work, telling myself that busyness was proof of love, that if I just kept grinding, things would settle down. But the small inconsistencies kept stacking up like warning signs. I didn't want to read. There were new clothes she couldn't explain, perfumes I didn't recognize, receipts from cafes and bars she'd never mentioned visiting. I tried to make sense of them. Maybe she was treating her coworkers. Maybe she just forgot. Every excuse felt thin, but I clung to them because the alternative was unbearable. One evening, as she got ready to meet her team, I asked gently, "You've been out a lot lately. Everything okay?" She froze, mascara brush midair, then let out a sharp laugh. "Are you seriously checking up on me now? What, do you think I'm cheating or something?" The tone in her voice, issy defensive, made my stomach twist. "No, I didn't mean because if you don't trust me," she interrupted. "Maybe you should ask yourself why you feel insecure." She slammed her makeup bag shut and left without looking back. I stood there for a long time after the door closed, staring at the faint shimmer of her perfume in the air. I felt guilty, like I'd done something wrong just for noticing the cracks. That night, I worked until sunrise, convincing myself that if I could just earn enough, save enough, love enough, everything would go back to normal. But something had shifted. Her texts were colder, her eyes distant. When I reached for her hand, she'd pull away like my touch was an inconvenience. And somewhere deep down, I started to realize the truth. I wasn't ready to face I was the only one still building a future. That Friday felt different from the start. I'd been working 12 days straight, but for once, I decided to leave early. I wanted to do something spontaneous, something that reminded us why we started all this in the first place. I picked up her favorite takeout, the one from that tiny Thai place we used to go to when life was simple. I even grabbed Flowers White Lilies, her favorite. The drive home felt light for the first time in weeks. I kept picturing her face lighting up when she saw me at the door. Maybe this was all we needed: time, connection, a reminder that we still mattered. But when I pulled up to our place, her car wasn't there. That was odd. She'd told me she was exhausted and staying in. Still, the lights inside were on. I remember balancing the food and flowers in one arm, unlocking the door quietly so I wouldn't startle her. Then I heard it loud. A man's voice, low, familiar. My body went cold. I stepped closer to the bedroom, every breath heavier than the last. Through the half-open door, I saw Lena, her hair tangled, her shirt halfway off. And next to her was the guy she'd once introduced as just a coworker. My brain refused to process it. The takeout slipped from my hand. The flowers hit the floor. She froze mid-laugh, her face draining of color when she saw me. You weren't supposed to be here," she whispered. I didn't say a word. My throat felt locked, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. He sat up, muttering something, but I couldn't hear. I turned, walked out, and shut the door behind me as quietly as I could that night. Sitting in my car under the streetlight, I realized something brutal. The woman I sacrificed everything for had been gone long before. I opened that door. I don't remember much of that drive, just the streetlights flickering through the windshield and the sound of my own breathing. I kept replaying it: the laughter, her shock, the look in her eyes when she realized I'd seen everything. It didn't feel real. It felt like a dream I couldn't wake from. I parked somewhere near the river and sat there all night. My phone buzzed again, and again her name lighting up the screen, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. When I finally did, sometime around dawn, her voice was small and trembling. "It didn't mean anything," she whispered. "Please, can we just talk?" I said nothing. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. She kept talking, voice breaking between sobs. He's just a mistake. I was lonely. You were never home. I thought you didn't care anymore." That line cut deeper than the betrayal itself. I thought you didn't care. As if my exhaustion, my silence, my absence weren't proof of sacrifice, but signs of neglect. When she realized I wasn't responding, her tone shifted, pleading first, then angry. "You're not perfect either. You know, you work all the time. You don't even notice me anymore." I hung up. The world felt empty after that quiet in a way that scared me. For the next few days, I moved like a ghost. I went to work, came home, avoided her messages. Every "I love you" text, every apology. Felt like poison I didn't want to taste. When she showed up at my door, crying, I couldn't even look at her. She kept saying, "I still love you. We can fix this." But as I stared at her, mascara running down her cheeks, I realized something I'd never wanted to admit. She didn't cheat because she was broken. She cheated because she knew I'd never stop forgiving her after that night. Something in me went quiet. Not angry, quiet, strategic quiet. I stopped yelling, stopped asking questions, stopped trying to fix anything. Lena thought it meant I was healing, but really, I was planning. She started acting sweet, again cooking dinner, sending good morning texts, pretending like nothing had happened. I played along. I smiled when she smiled, nodded when she talked about us getting back on track. She didn't notice that every time she reached for my hand, I was already slipping away inside while she slept. I went through our shared finances. The down payment account, the one I'd built through endless overtime, was in both our names. Every dollar, every sacrifice, sat there as a reminder of how blind I'd been. I quietly opened a new private account and started transferring small amounts over time. Nothing noticeable, nothing rushed. During the day, I updated my resume. At night, I researched cities I could vanish to, places where no one knew my name or my story. I stopped leaving traces, cleared old messages, changed passwords, moved files. Every step I took felt like pulling bricks from a wall I'd once built to protect her. Lena kept saying, "I'm glad you're giving me another chance." I'd nod, keeping my voice calm. "We're fine," I'd say, even as I packed an invisible bag in my head. The irony was, she thought she'd won. She thought silence meant surrender, but I wasn't forgiving high, was erasing her. One night, as she drifted off to sleep, she whispered, "We'll get our dream apartment soon." I looked at her and forced a smile. "Yeah," I said softly, "soon." She didn't realize that by the time she woke up from that dream, I'd already be gone. Just when I thought I'd seen the worst of it, the universe decided to twist the knife. A mutual friend, someone who didn't know we were working things out, pulled me aside after work one evening. He looked uneasy, like he was debating whether to say anything at all. "Man," he started carefully, "I don't want to get in the middle of your relationship, but do you know who that guy was? The one Lena was seeing?" I nodded stiffly. "Her coworker." "Why?" he exhaled. "He's not just some coworker. He's her boss. And she's been helping him with his startup behind your back." He bragged about her being his silent investor. The words hit like a thunderclap. Silent investor. I didn't understand until I checked my bank records that night. Thousands had vanished withdrawals I hadn't made, labeled vaguely as business transfers. I scrolled back months, my stomach sinking with every entry. She'd been siphoning money from our shared account, my overtime savings, to fund her affair partner's business. I remember sitting there in the dark, the only light coming from my laptop screen, my hands shaking. Every hour I'd worked, every weekend I'd sacrificed, every night I'd come home half dead from exhaustionette, had all gone into building their future, not ours. That was the moment something inside me broke and rebuilt. The sadness died first, replaced by something colder, not rage, not despair, precision. If she wanted to play with me like I was stupid, she'd soon learn what quiet revenge looked like. I stopped transferring money into the new account. Instead, I redirected the entire savings fund into overnight. I shut down her access before she even knew it existed. By morning, the account was empty on her end, and for the first time in months, I smiled. The next few days felt eerily calm. Lena still thought everything was fine better. Even she hummed in the kitchen, sent me memes, talked about our fresh start. I played along, each smile rehearsed, each word measured. She had no idea I was already gone, at least in spirit. I used my last few weeks at the job to finalize things. I'd accepted a remote contract overseas, something Lena thought was too risky before, but now it was perfect. I quietly ended our lease renewal, redirected all mail to a P.O. box, and started packing small essentials bit by bit. She didn't notice the missing files, the empty drawer, or how my clothes slowly disappeared from the closet. She kept asking, "Are you excited about the apartment?" I'd nod and say, "Can't wait." Inside, I was thinking, "You'll see what it's like to lose everything you took for granted." On the final day, she left for a late meeting. I waited until I heard her car fade down the street, then I moved. I packed what little I needed: passport, laptop, essentials, and left the key on the counter next to a cold cup of coffee. No note, no closure, just silence. By the time she got home, I was on a flight to another country. My phone buzzed endlessly with her name flashing again and again. I turned it off mid-air and stared out the window as the city lights shrank beneath me. For years, I'd worked myself to the bone trying to build a life with her. And now, in a single night, I'd dismantled it entirely. Some people scream when they're betrayed. I disappeared, and I knew my absence would haunt her louder than any revenge ever could. It took less than a week for the fallout to begin. Even from halfway across the world, I could feel the tremors of her panic. Friends started messaging me. "Dude, Lena's losing it. She's been calling everyone. Did something happen?" I ignored them all. Silence became my language now. Through one mutual friend, I heard that she'd gone to our bank, furious and confused. The savings were gone, the lease was canceled, and her name was flagged for account irregularities. She called my mother, my coworkers, even my old boss, desperate to find me. But that wasn't the worst part. Word had gotten out at her job. Apparently, her boss, the same man she risked everything for, wasn't the successful entrepreneur she thought he was. His startup had imploded, and the investors were suing for misused funds. When the company began investigating, Lena's name surfaced in the financial trail. She was fired immediately. I didn't need to lift a finger. She'd built her downfall herself. Meanwhile, I was living quietly in a small coastal town, working remotely, drinking morning coffee to the sound of waves instead of traffic. For the first time in years, I felt peace, not joy yet, but stillness. One night, I got an email from her. Just the subject line, "Please." I didn't open it. I knew what it would say: apologies, excuses, promises. She always thought words could fix what actions destroyed. I closed the laptop and leaned back, letting the night air fill the room. She had stolen my trust, my savings, and years of my life. But the one thing she could never take back was the silence I left behind. And as her world burned without me, I finally realized sometimes revenge doesn't need noise. It just needs distance. Months passed before I heard her name again. I'd almost forgotten what her voice sounded like until my mother called one evening, her tone uneasy. "She came by today," she said quietly, "Lena. She looked terrible. Said she just wanted to talk to you." I felt a strange mix of irritation and pity. "What did you tell her?" "That you don't live here anymore," my mom replied. She cried for a while. She said she made the biggest mistake of her life. I didn't respond. I stared at the floor, fingers tracing the rim of my coffee mug. For months, I'd imagined what I'd say if I ever saw her again, how I'd make her feel the same humiliation she gave me. But now, the thought just felt empty. Later that night, I checked her social media out of morbid curiosity. Everything was gone: her travel posts, her designer selfies, even her motivational quotes. In their place was silence. A few tagged photos showed her thinner eyes hollow, like the weight of her choices had finally caught up. That should have made me feel triumphant. It didn't single quotes T. Instead, I felt tired. For the first time, the revenge didn't taste sweet anymore. It just tasted like closure I didn't need. I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights blink in the distance. The same hands that once built a future for her had now built something better: freedom. I thought about replying to her. Maybe just one final line to end it all. But I didn't, because what I'd learned was simple: she didn't deserve my words anymore. That night, I finally deleted her number. The contact I once labeled my everything became nothing but a blank space. And for the first time since it all began, I realized I wasn't angry anymore, just free. By the time a full year passed, I had rebuilt myself from the ground up. My new job turned into a contract with international clients, and the savings I once meant for our apartment became the seed money for my own company. I worked hard, but this time it was for me. Every late night, every deadline, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself she'd once taken. I rented a quiet apartment by the coast, nothing fancy, just enough space for peace. Sometimes I'd think of her not with anger, but as a distant lesson carved into memory. Betrayal no longer felt like an open wound. It felt like armor. Then one morning, I saw her name in my inbox again. The subject line read, "You won." I hovered over it for a long time before curiosity won out. Her message was long. She said she'd lost her job, her reputation, and the apartment she'd moved into with him. She talked about depression, regret, and missing the only person who ever truly loved her. At the end, she wrote, "I hope you're happy. You took everything from me." I stared at the screen for a while, then started typing. My reply was just one sentence. "I didn't take anything, you gave it all away." Then I hit send. There was no satisfaction, no dramatic victory, just quiet clarity. I'd spent years breaking myself for her approval, for love that was conditional and self-serving. Now, I didn't need either. I shut the laptop, stepped outside, and watched the waves crash against the rocks. The air felt cleaner than it had in years. That was my final act of power, not revenge. Not cruelty, just peace she could never steal again. It's been 3 years since everything happened, but sometimes, in quiet moments, I still think about her. Not with hate, just with the strange calm that comes after surviving a storm. There was a time when her name made my chest tighten, when I couldn't sleep without replaying every lie, every sacrifice. But now, it's just a story I once lived through. Looking back, I realized I wasn't just working 80-hour weeks to build a home. I was trying to build validation proof that love could be earned through effort. That if I worked hard enough, stayed loyal enough, gave enough, someone would see my worth. But that's not how love works. Real love doesn't ask you to destroy yourself for it. There's something poetic about how it all ended. She spent years searching for comfort and control, status, and shortcuts. Why I found freedom in letting go? I thought disappearing would be revenge, but it turned out to be redemption. Sometimes people message me online asking for advice after being betrayed. I tell them the same thing I learned the hard way. You don't have to burn someone's life down to get even. Just walk away and watch how quickly their world collapses without your effort holding it up. Lena once told me that I was too predictable, that my kindness made me easy to manipulate. Maybe she was right. But the thing about kind people is we rebuild. We grow back stronger, quieter, sharper now. When I wake up and see the sunrise over the water, I don't think about what I lost. I think about what I finally understood. The best revenge isn't rage, it's peace and silence, delivered at the perfect time.